Well, Plymouth Sound has been a hub of activity over the last 24 hours. Scores of yachts competing in the Fastnet Race sought refuge there from last night's storm. And tonight, thousands of spectators are expected to gather for the start of the British Firework Championships. And Justin is on Plymouth Hoe for us this evening. Hello, Justin.
Hello, Victoria. Yes, a lot going on here on Plymouth Hoe tonight. This is the 11th year in a row that Plymouth has played host to the British Firework Championships. And later this evening, just across the water there at Mountbatten, a spectacular display will be launched by the first three teams taking part in the competition. But the weather is already affecting those preparations. We'll have more on that later. The heavy rain and the gale force winds which have been battering the southwest in the last 24 hours have also taken their toll on the Fastnet Race. More than 140 of the 270 strong fleet that took off from the Isle of Wight yesterday have been forced to abandon the race, many of them coming into Plymouth, and that has been a great disappointment for many of those taking part. Later on we'll have a first-hand account of some of the weather conditions from Spotlight reporter Johnny Rutherford, who was on board one of the yachts. But first, Louise Hubble reports on how the weather brought a swift end to the Fastnet for so many of the competitors.
271 boats set out yesterday from the Isle of Wight. Spirits may have been high, but the shadow of poor weather conditions was inescapable. The start was postponed for the first time in the Fastnet's history because of the appalling conditions. Leaving from Cowes, the route takes the cruise over 600 miles round the most southerly tip of Ireland and then back across the Celtic Sea to Plymouth. But for over 100 crews, this was a reality today, limping back to the southwest in atrocious weather, many returning to Plymouth, their journey incomplete.
We were falling off the top of waves as high as, not quite as high as those flags, right? Off the top of those waves and going down them, and the boat was actually going down like that. And the boom was in the water, so when it gets like that, you're more in survival mode rather than racing a boat.
For this crew from Lymington, the stormy conditions snatched away their winning position.
Disappointment, frustration. We think we were leading the Fastnet for quite a large chunk of the way across from Portland Bill, and then it blew up as we were coming around start.
There was no shame in pulling out of the race. The rigging of this boat in Salcombe left mangled, and on another vessel a person with a broken leg was rescued by the lifeboat. With rows of dejected boats in Plymouth, it led some to question whether the race should have gone ahead at all.
These boats do face conditions like this from time to time, and they had the opportunity to retire and seek safe shelter, which is exactly what they've done. So I'm sure we did the right thing.
For this crew and many others, it may not be a Fastnet race they completed, but it's certainly one they will remember. Louise Hubble, BBC Spotlight, Plymouth.
Well, one of the amateurs taking part was our own cameraman reporter, Johnny Rutherford. He was on board a 39-foot yacht from the NONSTOP Sailing School in Dartmouth. They were well positioned in Class 1 when the storm finally forced them to abandon the race. Here's Johnny's personal account of what happened.
Despite the 25-hour delay, we got off to a good start right in the middle of the Fastnet Armada. The sun was shining at Cowes, but we knew rough water lay ahead, and a race that would need all the skills and tactics to get us through a difficult sea.
Free the main. Okay. Yeah, we're looking forward to the weather condition. We're going to see what happens, I'm pretty nervous, quite excited.
We need to tack back towards the island.
The skipper knew that plotting a fast route needed to involve safety options for the storm ahead.
Mainly to be staying fairly close to the south coast of Devon and Cornwall overnight, and with plenty of safe havens, and other than that, shorten sail as required. And if we do all the right things, then we should be able to see ourselves through what will be quite a short period of really heavy weather.
All through the race we could hear reports on our ship's radio of yacht after yacht retiring due to the gale force conditions, which finally struck us at night. A strong wave knocked out our navigation lights, and then we discovered that diesel was leaking into the cabin, making everyone feel sick. With more storm ahead, the skipper had no other choice.
Well, I'm very sorry to say that we've had to retire. Absolutely devastated by it. The whole crew's choked. But it was the right decision. We had a few problems with the boat overnight, and it was the sensible thing to do to make for safe haven in Plymouth here.
The only comforter was that we were not alone. Many other yachts had also retired into Plymouth, including our sister yacht Discovery from Dartmouth.
So unfortunately the adventure has ended up here at Queen Anne's Battery. It was a fantastic couple of days, but it's sad that it's over, but I guess it is the safest choice. Johnny Rutherford, BBC Spotlight, Plymouth.
Well, we'll get some of Johnny's thoughts in just a moment, but also joining me here this evening is a familiar face to Spotlight, Pete Goss, who has also been forced to abandon the race. As an experienced sailor, Pete, what were conditions like?
Last night, well, actually we had a cracking sail. We had a good beat out of the Solent, and then it went southerly, picked up, very dark night, and but got quite confused seas around midnight, so it was picking up. There's a big sea state running. But the decision to retire, which I think applies to a lot of the fleet, wasn't actually the conditions last night. It's actually what's predicted out in the Irish Sea, and we had quite a good course in the sense that as you went down the south coast, there's lots of stop-off points where you can drop out, but with a view to the final gate at Land's End as to whether you go out round the Scillies, and it's pretty wild out there. And we're in a tiny little trimaran, so our little 17-knot postage stamp isn't the thing to take out.
Some of those conditions, though, were well forecast, and with that in mind, was it the right decision to actually start the race?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think there's a number of things to this. One is there's a complete spectrum of boats ranging from 100 feet to 30 feet, so each skipper will take a different decision. In terms of the forecast, the RORC delayed the race by 25 hours because there was a potential of an upper airstream combining with a lower system, which could give, a really bad 50-knot storm. Once that had passed, what we then had was good old British weather, and it was down to each skipper, and away they went. But they're pretty well prepared, these boats now. I'm sure you did some training before taking the race on.
Well, let's talk to Johnny now. We heard in your report about some of the conditions, but as an amateur sailor, Johnny, all those preparations, did it prepare you for what you saw last night?
It did prepare me because we did the St Malo race earlier, and actually, to be quite honest, it was a little bit tougher at Channel in quite stormy conditions. But fantastic sail, and the big
Well, I'm sorry about that. The weather has obviously taken its toll on our microphones, but fortunately the bad weather hasn't had such a disastrous effect on another major sailing event taking place in the southwest this week. The Falmouth Week Regatta is well underway in the Cornish port without incident so far, I'm glad to say. And